Dang it, how do I get sucked into these teenage soap operas? Ginny and Georgia is the new Netflix original series that just launched. It's angsty and dramatic, but is it worth checking out? 15-year-old Jenny Miller often feels more mature than her 30-year-old mother, the irresistible and dynamic Georgia Miller. After years on the run, Georgia desperately wants to put down roots in picturesque New England and give her family something they've never had, a normal life. But Georgia's past threatens her and her family's new way of life, and Georgia will do anything to protect her family. All right, so first we have Georgia. She is flawed, damaged, and abrasive. She does some bad things out of protection for her family, so this creates some conflict in my perception of her. She's doing bad things with good intentions or motives, and that doesn't make them right, but it does keep her from being an outright despicable character. She has a big heart when it comes to her kids, and you can see how her background shapes how she raises them. She's also searching for some sort of grounding for herself. I mean, she still wants to be loved, but she's also self-sabotaging even without realizing it. She's a really strong person, enduring so much, but when we see her behaviors, is she a sociopath, or are her actions just a result of her traumatic past? Brianne Howie as Georgia is great. I mean, she's able to really sell the character and displays the conflict she has internally really well. She's also charismatic and sometimes a bit syrupy. She's a little much at times too, but that's exactly how she's supposed to be portrayed. Jenny is Georgia's daughter. Antonia Gentry convincingly plays Jenny as this lonely and hurting young woman. We learn she hasn't had friends due to their nomadic nature. I mean, they've just constantly moved around because of the situations that her mom gets them in. While Jenny sometimes seems more mature than Georgia, she's really not. I mean, she just emulates her mom more than she realizes. She's rash and acts out in very self-destructive ways because she's looking for connection, acceptance, and love. She's strong and resilient, which are partly traits developed from moving around so much. I mean, Jenny has had to build this shell of protection for herself, but that's also a trait she learned from her mom. I mean, as much as she may not like that, she's very similar to Georgia because that's been her role model. So many of the supporting characters are just extra and they're just over the top. And while we'd probably normally know one or two people that are extra in our lives, the saturation of this area for people like that is just crazy. The kids in the high school who Jenny is around are all over dramatic. And I know being a teenager sucks. I mean, you're just trying to survive high school. We get to see a lot of the stereotypical teenage drama characters here. You've got the bro brigade who are crude, self-absorbed, fist-pumping partiers. And then we have the popular girl group who are very cliquish, but within their small group, they have several stereotypes too, like the over-the-top domineering personality. I mean, she masks her insecurities with big emotion. You have the quiet hurting one who's being eaten from the inside out with their sadness, and then the perfect one who seems to just have it all. They sum it up really well when they leave each other in the halls. Love you, mean it, hate you, kidding. They're a bit like the mean girls, but not nearly as mean. Then we have the sensitive smart guys who seem to have it just all together. I mean, everything clicks for them. They get good grades, can woo the girls, and of course, they play guitar and they're in a band. And to round it out, we have the damaged and dark character. He's misunderstood and gruff, but does he have that hidden hot soft spot? Even as abrasive as a lot of the characters started off as, they really did begin to grow on me. But the extra doesn't just exist in the school arena. I mean, we get that in the adults in this show too. Some are annoying and some are downright funny. Georgia has this next door neighbor, Ellen, and she's a mom to two teenagers, and I thought she was really funny. I mean, she's basically thrown away her filter, and her conversations really did make me laugh out loud. There's the adult antagonist to Georgia, Cynthia, and she's his mom also, and the story makes her very abrasive, even if she's right some of the time. And we grow to really dislike her through the way that the show paints her. One thing though that this series shows is that everyone has crap that influences their behaviors. And while the crap in our lives, shouldn't excuse the behavior, we can see how it does have an impact. Now, unfortunately, the background for Cynthia comes at the very end of the season. And I don't know, is that to make us feel guilty for how we have seen her, or is it just to explain her behaviors? The placement of this explanation really affects how much of a sympathetic character she is. The story uses narration, flashbacks, and current situations to build the drama. I like the flashbacks, and I think they're good because they space out the pertinent info as it needs to be revealed, which maintains the intrigue of the story, and especially when it comes to George's background. Now, some story parts are obvious, but I like what they set up. Some are resolved in this first season, and others are teased and then held for the next season. At least I hope and assume that they're held for another season. They tackle issues like bullying and self-harm in this too. The bullying portion is handled less in how to deal with a bully or if you're being bullied, and more of how to bully. And they make some attempts to work through this, but ultimately it's not resolved. There is a good conversation when it comes to self-harm that I'm glad that they had. They show glimpses of the harm, so to not really address a solution that they've been showing, it just would have felt irresponsible. There's also an instance of body shaming that just made me sad because, so far, that portion hasn't been addressed or resolved. But we get to watch the character deal with it, and to see the mental and emotional distress it caused, it was just heartbreaking. Now, the show only captures a few months of Georgia's family in their new town, and they pack a lot in, but it's not just all dour and sad drama. There's a fair amount of humor that comes in the show, especially because they are this kind of fish out of water family. A lot of the supporting cast too gets to provide the snarky and sly comments that break tension when it's needed. And I like that they have a lot of great timing, and they really do add a lot to the story. I think there are conveniences that the show places on the story to move things along. And sometimes they gloss over some actions so we don't see what happened, but we just hear about it in the dialogue after. And overall, these aren't huge deal breakers for the show or for me, but once or twice I just wished that it would have had some more explanation. Instead of, well, that just happened, moving on. There is a minor mystery that's also playing out in the background, and it's mainly in the flashbacks. And really, I guess it's not so much of a mystery to us as the audience because we're privy to the facts, but the characters are diving into a mystery, and that just amplifies all the drama. Jenny really wants to know more about her mom, and up until this point, she's just gone along with whatever craziness has occurred. But because Jenny is closer to becoming an adult, and she's developing friendships finally and relationships, she wants to have roots. She doesn't want her mom's past to disrupt what's being built, and then questions come from there. Sometimes it does feel a bit like Pandora's box. If Jenny looks inside, she can never unsee. And how is that going to affect her? And we know that Georgia has motives for keeping these secrets, but what is the cost for keeping them or even revealing them? This really does add more tension to the story, especially between the characters, and we get to see the change in dynamics that this brings about between Jenny and Georgia. And there's a realism to their interactions, even if the situations are accelerated to fit within the timing of the show. Now, the show is 10 episodes and each are almost an hour long, so this is a big time commitment for binging. Now, I watched it over 2 days, not only so I could get the review done, but because I was sucked in. I begrudgingly was enjoying a lot of this. It's all of its problems and everything. And while some of the story and episodes feel like they're kind of a day in the life type of episodes, you do feel the massive tension that is building. The last episode is pretty explosive too, and while it's probably over dramatic, I'd say it was still pretty satisfying. Overall, I had fun with this show, and this became sort of a guilty pleasure watch for me. I was sucked into the drama and the characters, even if I didn't want to be. I became invested in the outcome, and I needed to see what was going to happen next, even if I thought it wasn't going to be a positive result. Georgia is not a character that is easily looked up to, and while we can root for flawed people, especially when they're on the road to change, when a character is more static, it does make me more conflicted. I understand her motives and I can sympathize with some of them, but I'm not sure I can go along with them or condone them. This conflict I have with her is one of those things that sucked me into the show, and I keep waiting to see if I'm gonna see a redemption to her. There's sex, no nudity, a lot of profanity, and some violence, including self-harm. I give season 1 of Jenny and Georgia 3.5 out of 5 couches. So what's a guilty pleasure show or movie for you? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.